God is so many different things. He is so amazing. He's everything to us. Today, God is our peace. It was about, 5, 6 years ago. We decided we were going to make a trip. We're going to take our summer vacation, and we were going to go see Sam Campbell's Island. Now, how many of you here are Sam Campbell fans? All right, we're in good company today. Lots of readers, lots of folks who love Sam Campbell. For those of you who are not familiar with Sam Campbell, you must get familiar with Sam Campbell. He's a writer, wrote naturalist stories about creatures in the wild, and he would go up to Wisconsin. He had a cabin on an island on a little lake there in Wisconsin, and he would go up there and spend time on the island in his little cabin, and he would write these stories about the creatures he saw all around him. Well, there's a whole long series of books, and we loved to read those to our girls as they were growing up, so we decided, not too far away, I think it was about 6 hours away, we're going to go, and we're going to spend our summer vacation, and we're going to explore this area, and we're going to see where Sam Campbell did his amazing writing. So we put our canoe on top of our van, packed up all our stuff, and we headed off. Found a campsite up there, and it was a little bit primitive. The only running water was a pump that pumped ice-cold water from way down deep in a well in the ground. And so your showers were taken by getting brain freeze, and your fingers had icicles by the time you were done, and that's how you cleaned up. But it was amazingly gorgeous up there. So we head out, and we start exploring, trying to figure out, okay, so where is this island? Where is this cabin? And we got to see this. And so we headed out, and we finally found the trailhead. So there's a little trail that runs along on the mainland alongside the lake, and you can walk all the way out there, and you get to a little point off of the trail, and you can look out across the island. And out there in the water, and it's a little tiny island. It's much smaller than I imagined based on reading the books. And there in this thick grove of trees and things on the island is a cabin you can just barely see through the brush. So we're there on the trail, and we're thinking, okay, we got to go get our canoe. Because it's not enough to stand here and look out across and see the island, right? We can't just do that. We've got to get our canoe, and we got to head out, and we want to put our feet on the island where Sam Campbell lived. And so next day, we got our canoe headed out and loaded it in the water, and we started paddling. And there's a little island not too far from Sam Campbell's island that's even smaller, and it's called Loon Island. The loons, we didn't realize this, the loons actually sleep there at night. We camped there one night, woke up in the middle of the night to a whole bunch of loons surrounding us, and then in the morning, very early, I think Wendy got up around 3 and found a sign that said, no camping on this island. So 3 o'clock in the morning, we tear down all our stuff, pack up, and get off the island. It's a little nerve-wracking to all of a sudden realize you're doing something wrong you weren't supposed to do. Luckily, there was no one there to catch us. So we ended up all right. So we paddle out, and now we head over towards Sam Campbell's Island, and we start kind of circling around the backside of it because we realize that someone actually has bought this place and lives in it. Now, we didn't realize it the first time we headed out there to the island, but the person who bought it was not incredibly friendly. We imagine, this is Sam Campbell's Island. Whoever lives here has got to be like Sam Campbell, right? Probably bought it because he loved the books, and he's just going to love everyone and embrace everyone and welcome anyone who wants to come to this island and get closer to God and nature. No, not this guy. This guy was cranky. He was irritable, and he didn't want anyone on his island. It's no longer Sam Campbell's island. It is his island, and he wanted to be very clear about that. So anyway, we're on the backside, and just, touch our toes onto the island. Well, I did. I was a little nervous. I didn't want to go up on the island where I could be seen. Wendy and I forget, was it? Yeah, Yanita and Kaylee Ann, they were a little more adventurous. They had a goal in mind, and they were not going to let a cantankerous old man stop them from actually walking on Sam Campbell's Island. So I'm down there in the canoe. I'm going to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do and stay off the island. And no trespassing, I'm not going to get out of the boat, but I'm going to man the canoe so that when he comes out with whatever weapon he comes out with, they can jump in and we can get out of there, right? So I'm there in the canoe watching, and they kind of go up on the island a little bit, make sure that the trees are between them and the cabin where he can't see them. And I don't remember if it was this time or another time when we were canoeing by at a little further distance, but they realized there is a reason he doesn't want people on his island. He is a nature lover, if you get my drift. Anyway. So they're there on the end. They get back off, no harm, no foul. He didn't know we were there, and we head off. And so there's also, if you read the books, there's another cabin that he had as well that was on the mainland that surrounds the lake. And so we decided, well, let's see if we can find that one. Now, I didn't plan this well. There's things that bring peace into your life, and there's things that don't bring peace into your life. And one of the things that takes away from peace in your life is being out of control in a situation you're uncomfortable in. Are you with me? When you're in an uncomfortable situation, you want to maintain maximum control. So we're canoeing alongside, and we're still within sight of, we'll call it Sam Campbell's Island instead of Grumpy Man's Island. So we're still within sight of the island. He can still see us here. And so we're canoeing along looking for the cabin on the shore. And the cabins are set way up. So there's dock, a lot of like on Hayden Lake or different lakes. You have the lake here, and then you got to go up a series of steps and stuff up a hill to get up to the cabins. So they're up there, and we're canoeing along, and you can't really see the cabins really well. And so we'd read the book. We looked for the identifying marks of this cabin, but we couldn't see it well enough. So I misplanned this whole thing, and somehow I was sitting in the middle of the canoe with Wendy in one end and Unita in the other, and Kaylee Ann was there in the middle with me, and the two ladies were paddling. And they decided, hey, we can't see well enough. Let's go up to shore, and let's walk up to the cabin and actually see what's there. And I'm like, okay, this is private property. Are you feeling the anxiety that's going on within me now? I'm like, okay, we're not too far from this guy's cabin, and we know based on stories we heard from the locals that he's not really friendly. We probably shouldn't be here. But as we're going along, they looked, and there's no one in the cabins. There's no one home. And so it was all peaceful and quiet. So they think, no harm done. We're just going to sneak up really quick and take a look and see if we can find these identifying marks on this cabin, some of the carvings and stuff that were on it, and just see, because this seems like it fits the right place. And I'm sitting there in the middle. I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think this is a good idea. And so we pull over, and Unita jumps out on the little dock, and she heads up the hill to see if she can find those initials on the cabin. They are on a mission, they have a target, and they are on this adventure, and they're having a wonderful time with it. Meanwhile, I'm getting more and more nervous. Someone's going to see us, someone's going to get upset, and all of a sudden we hear this noise. And we look over at Sam Campbell's Island, and the dock has left the shore. And it is coming towards us. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're in a canoe and you see a dock coming towards you, that's not generally a good thing, right? He had rigged up the dock with a motor and a propeller. And he had seen us over there, and not only was he protecting his island, he was protecting the neighboring beach with all the other neighbors' cabins. And he was flying across the intervening space between Sam Campbell's Island and where we were, and Unita's halfway up the hill. I'm sitting in the middle. I have no control over the situation. Here comes this dock, full speed, motoring straight towards us. And I'm sitting down there in the bottom of the canoe, looking up as this dock comes closer and closer, and he's mad. You can see it in his face. He is not happy. All the stories were true, and maybe not true enough. He is angry. He comes over, and he lays into us, and he's like, what are you doing? This is private property, and why are you trespassing on private property? Now, I've had a lot of training in conflict resolution. Seminary took hours and hours and hours of classes in conflict resolution. Had many years of ministry dealing with a lot of conflict resolution. So I am equipped and trained in how to deal with conflict. So brilliantly, sitting there in this canoe, looking up at this angry man, I open my mouth and the words just come out. I didn't do it. And ever since, my family will never let me live that down. He threw us under the bus. Blame it all on us. Now, it may have been accurate, but it wasn't the right thing to do, right? When you get anxious and you're out of control, you don't have control over the situation, you do things that, well, maybe you didn't plan on doing, right? Your training can go out the window. Your well-laid plans and your history of dealing with conflict and resolving situations to resolve them peacefully goes out the window. And in that moment, well, I just bailed. I didn't do it. Our verse for today that we're looking at starts off Philippians 4:6 by saying, be anxious for. And I want to pause there for just a moment. Be anxious for. If you didn't know how this verse ended, if you didn't know the word that came next, what would you put in there? The way it's worded is kind of interesting. It doesn't start off by saying, don't be anxious, right? Normally, if you're going to tell people not to be anxious, you would say, don't, or stop being. But it starts off with a positive, be anxious for. So if you were to fill in the blank based on what's going on in our world today, based on what's going on in the Christian world, in the world around us, what next word would you think God would be saying to put in there? Be anxious for. What kinds of things would you think we should be anxious about? Everything, all right. We'll make it easy, all right? We're just going to say everything, right? There's war, and there's human trafficking, and there's all these things going on, and there's conflict between Christians and non-Christians, and all these things going on in our world, and we worry in the church about the world coming into the church, and the world on the outside worries about the church messing with the world, and we're all worried and anxious about all these things, and God says, be anxious for nothing. Wait a second. So you're telling me we're not supposed to be anxious about the world coming into the church? You're telling me we're not supposed to be anxious about the political situation in the world? Oh, wait. This isn't you telling me this. This is God telling us all this. Be anxious for nothing. So that made me wonder, what does that word anxious mean? What is anxiety? Well, I went searching, and I wanted to find out what is anxiety. All right, so what are the symptoms? How do you know if you're being anxious? How do you know if you're violating this command of God to be anxious for nothing? Well, here's a few of the symptoms that may indicate you might be going contrary to Philippians 4. Feeling nervous, restless, or tense. Now, it's not just one thing. It's a combination of these things that all come together, all right? Feeling nervous, restless, or tense. Well, I want to jump back to the verse a second. Now let's test this out. Be anxious for nothing. How many of you are anxious for nothing in your lives? Never anxious, never stressed out, never worried to the place where it consumes your thinking and you're so focused on this thing that it interferes with other things in your life. Right, we read this, be anxious for nothing, and ironically, one of the first things that often comes to Christians is we get anxious because we're not living up to what the verse tells us to do, right? We have anxiety about the fact that we're not living according to the command that God has given us, and all of a sudden, well, do you see the problem? Be anxious for nothing, and now we're anxious that we're anxious because God told us not to be anxious. And it creates this cycle, and it's not helpful. And we can't find our way out of it. And a lot of times in Christian society, in Christian culture, in Christian life, we end up living under this weight, this cloud of, well, I'm not measuring up. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. And the very command that's supposed to set us free binds us under a weight and a cloud. By the way, if you read the whole context of this, Paul does not say he was never in trouble or trial or had to deal with things that caused him distress. You read just a few verses later in Philippians 4, and Paul comes and he says to the Philippian church, thank you for being there when I was in distress. Anxiety and distress kind of go hand in hand, right? If you're not in distress, you're not generally anxious. They go hand in hand. So Paul dealt with difficult situations. Paul had anxiety coming, and if you stop and think about it, if we didn't have to deal with anxiety, if there was no anxiety within us, God wouldn't have to give us this instruction, right? So this is not a condemnation when you're feeling stressed out, when you're feeling anxious, when these things come. God is saying, hey, wait, I'm giving you the keys to unlock a better way of living. I want to help you understand how to deal with stressful situations so they don't overwhelm you, so they don't overtake you, so they don't control your life. I want to help you to be able not to throw your family under the bus when you get stressed out in the bottom of the canoe and you feel like a 4-year-old kid being scolded because he did something wrong, right? God says, be anxious for nothing. Now I'm going to help unlock for you how to live a life that frees you from the anxiety that keeps coming. And it doesn't free you permanently. It frees you on an ongoing basis. Do you understand the difference there? permanently would be like, it's gone, and I am never stressed and never anxious again. This works on an ongoing basis. So anxiety and stress comes, and you follow, we'll take a look at it here. You follow the tips that God gives us, and it frees you from the anxiety that comes and comes again and comes again. It gives you a way to deal with the stress and the anxiety of life as it keeps coming at you. Be anxious for nothing. So let's go ahead and take a closer look. Symptoms of anxiety: feeling nervous, restless, or tense. Having a sense of impending danger, panic, or doom. By the way, a really easy tip on this one is just turn off the news. All right? Turn on the news, you'll feel an impending sense of danger, panic, or doom. Called clickbait. Turn it off, freeing. Having an increased heart rate, breathing rapidly, sweating, trembling, feeling weak or tired, trouble concentrating or thinking about anything other than the present worry, trouble sleeping because the anxiety, the worry keeps running through your mind and you're trying to figure out how to deal with it. These are the symptoms that Mayo Clinic has observed anxiety gives. Now, there's varying levels of these. You may have one or two, maybe you have three or four, you may have all of them. How do you deal with these symptoms? How do you deal with anxieties? It's interesting as you continue researching this, as you continue trying to understand it, they found in their studies that richer countries have more issues with anxiety than poorer countries. I thought that was kind of interesting. You'd think that we would have less anxiety, less stress because we have more. But it doesn't seem to work that way. Statistics show, and they're not 100% sure why, there's some speculation as to different reasons, but richer countries have a higher rates of anxiety in their population than poorer countries. In a finding that surprised even the researchers, that anxiety also interfered more with daily activities and responsibilities. Someone living in a war-torn, poor country generally, on average, will deal better with the stress that they are living under than someone in a wealthy country living under much less severe levels of stress. It's curious as to why that is. I'll be interested to watch as they continue studying this and trying to figure it out. But there are a few things that we do that contribute to our own anxiety, as they've discovered. According to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, 18.1% of American adults have an anxiety disorder. This means it rises to the level of a disorder where you can't function normally. That's almost 1 in 5. If you count how many people are sitting around you, 1 out of every 5 Americans is dealing with an anxiety disorder. It interferes with your ability to live life, to cope with everything going on around you, which means about 40 million people in the United States deal with an anxiety disorder, and the rest of us deal with varying levels of anxiety. It's a huge subject that God is dealing with here. So here's some tips to deal with anxiety. First of all, learn about it. Do some research, figure out what it is, so you know what's going on, all right? That's the first step. So that's what I did. I started researching and studying. By the way, don't just go online and Google something. Check the sites and resources you're going to. There's all sorts of different ones. So I started going through this, and I started seeing some common themes, and we'll get to that in a minute here. And I was like, okay, these various websites all have this common theme. Okay, now I need to go back and vet the websites I'm looking at to make sure it's legit, right? Make sure that these are scientifically based medical sites that I'm using to draw the information from. So learn about anxiety. Second one is mindfulness. When I heard that term, I thought I understood it, but I want to go a little deeper. What is mindfulness? Well, when Jesus said, don't worry about tomorrow, for the troubles of tomorrow are sufficient for themselves, that's really what mindfulness is talking about. See, when we get anxious, when we get rolled up into these stressful situations, they begin to consume us, and we begin to worry about what might happen. What if? What if I go and people make fun of me, right? What if I go to school and I fail that test tomorrow? And also we're always focusing off in the future. What if something bad happens? And that really doesn't help us with today, right? So mindfulness is bringing your attention and focus back to today and focusing on what you can focus on today. It even goes beyond that, though. It goes beyond just focusing on today, because you can get all caught up in anxiety and worry today, and your mind is spinning out of control with that worry and anxiety, and you're not being productive, you're not being able to move forward with your life because you're just going in this constant cycle of worry and stress, and it just consumes your present as well. So in your present, there's several things that they advise you can do to be mindful. When you realize your mind is spinning out of control and you've been stuck on this stress that you're focused on, just stop and focus on something else that is present in the moment, right? Focus on the beautiful skyline as you drive around Coeur d'Alene. Make sure you watch the cars on the road too, but focus on something beautiful to take your mind off of the stress. Focus on the reality of what is around you. See, stress and anxiety takes us into a somewhat unreal world. We're wrestling with something that's not physical right in front of us. So focus on the physical things that are right in front of you, and that will draw your mind away from just cycling and spinning over the anxiety. So focus on the beauty around you. Focus on something physical. Even just focus, okay, I'm going to breathe, right? Something physical you can focus on to stop your mind from spinning is what mindfulness is. And they said one other thing that's cool here is give thanks. Make a list of things you're thankful for. And as you focus on the reality of real things that are going well and real things you can be thankful for, it brings down the level of the anxiety in your mind. And then you're more equipped, you're better able to deal with the stressful thing that's causing the anxiety at hand. Live with mindfulness. Relaxation techniques, right? If you're all stressed out and worried, go out and take a swim in the lake. Go paddleboarding. Whatever it is that you find that relaxes you. We are blessed here in North Idaho to have a million different things we can do to relax. Get out in nature that God has blessed us with. Find ways to relax. And if you can't, if you're stuck in a car and you feel yourself tensing, again, just breathe. Just focus on something that you can relax with. Correct breathing techniques. Cognitive therapy. This is an interesting one because when you're anxious, do you tend to think realistically? Now, as I was listening this morning, I'm with you, Mark Eric. When you and your wife were sharing about your daughter leaving, we're getting ready for our daughter to go off as well, and she's an RA this year, so we're like, okay, she's not coming home except for on weekends where the whole thing's open. So we're stressing about it, and I came up with a brilliant way. I just told Wendy it's not happening. She's not leaving. Right? Here's a troubling situation. I'm going to deal with it. It's not happening. It's called denial, right? It's very relaxing, very soothing, but it doesn't really help anything. Cognitive therapy helps you evaluate what is real in your thinking and what is not. What is real? So the reality is every time we're going to steal her away on home leaves, and we're going to make sure that when she's back, she's singing with you guys. All right, we're going to make sure Christmas break, no boys stealing her away. She's coming back here to sing with you guys and with us, all right? So we evaluate the things going on in our minds to see, is this realistic? Is this, am I just getting carried away? Are my real feelings, my daughter's leaving home, real feelings, real situation, but are they carrying me to an emotional state, to thoughts that are unrealistic? And then the next one is directly tied to it as well, behavior therapy. Change the behaviors. Find ways you can alter the situation by altering your behavior, right? If something is terrifying you, find a way to get a little bit closer to the situation in a way that helps to bring down the fear level, right? If I'm scared of steps, if I'm scared of walking down these 3 steps, I come close to the steps and I stand here, right? And I realize, hey, these steps haven't hurt me yet. And so then I take another behavioral modification and I take 1 step, right? You find little things to do. Oh, I can do 1 step. It's okay, right? Now, this is obviously an illustration that for most of us is kind of silly, but that's the thing with fear. That's the thing with anxiety, is it takes things and it blows them out of proportion, and so it becomes unrealistic in our minds. And we have these fears that are unrealistic, that shape us and form us. So these kind of relate. Look at what you're thinking, evaluate it, and then take behavioral steps to modify how you're feeling about things. Counseling. Sometimes we just can't do this on our own. We are just overwhelmed and we can't handle it on our own. Get a good counselor that can help you walk through these types of things. Dietary adjustments. Now, this is one that I tried to avoid. And the more research I did, the higher my level of anxiety went up as I was researching this. And I became more and more anxious about standing up and telling you this morning. And I kept going from site to site to site. When I first read it, I was like, okay, is this an Adventist site? I'm going to find something else. Let's go somewhere else. And so I started researching. So here's the first one. No anxiety here. Dietary adjustments. Make sure you're getting enough magnesium and vitamin B in your diet. Those help to reduce stress-inducing hormones and things in your body. So make sure those are present there in your diet. Whole grain cereals, leafy green vegetables, and low-fat dairy products. Can you see why I thought this was an Adventist site? It's not. These were all scientific sites that I was looking on. The next one, don't crucify me. Get rid of alcohol, nicotine, and, well, you can read the last one for yourself. They trigger your nervous system. And so the nervous energy that's already going on with anxiety, guess what these do? They trigger that and compound it and make it even worse. All right? So they said it, not me. I just am the messenger to relay what the scientific journal said. All right. Dietary adjustments, exercise. Exercise is huge. Exercise is huge in this. Going out and getting exercise just relieves stress, does all sorts of wonderful things for you, helps calm your mind. It just really brings a ton of these things together. Learn to be assertive. A lot of times we're anxious about situations that revolve around other people, right? That involve other people. We get anxious because, well, we may offend someone. We get anxious because someone may get mad at us. We may get anxious because they're going to drive their dock over our canoe, and right? Whatever it is, we get anxious about these things, and most of them involve other people that we're anxious about. So we need to learn to be assertive. Now, assertive is not aggressive. There's a difference. You understand? Are you with me? Assertive and aggressive are two different things. You don't have to go out there and dominate everyone around you. That's not what this is saying. But be assertive. Let it be okay to say no to protect your well-being. And if others have to adjust because you had to say no to protect your well-being, that's okay. In fact, it's healthy. It's part of not being consumed with anxiety. It's part of living out God's instruction. Build self-esteem. Now, this is a funny one. Building self-esteem, one of the first things that you need to learn to do in order to avoid anxiety and building self-esteem is learn to laugh at yourself. Kind of seems counterintuitive, right? I'm going to laugh at myself. Well, a lot of anxiety is built up around what others think of us. We're anxious about how they're going to view us, how they're going to think about us, and that's where the anxiety, kind of boils up in our system. So if I can laugh at myself over something, then I'm not worried if you're laughing at me too. We're laughing together. It's a bonding moment, right? It's a good thing. So learning to take ourselves a little less seriously actually increases our self-esteem, because our self-esteem isn't bound up in what others think of us. It's bound up in the one who is our peace. It's bound up in a relationship with God. It's bound up in the fact that you are created by the God of the universe to be unique and special, to be in a relationship with Him and to be in relationship with others. And when that comes first and you find your self-esteem there, then you can laugh at yourself. You can realize, yeah, God created me. Joke's on Him, right? This is an important step. If we can step back and not be so overcome by what other people think about us, it lowers our anxiety levels incredibly and helps with building our self-esteem. Structured problem solving, build up steps and things. We kind of talked about this earlier. Now, there are some times where you just simply need medication. The levels in your body are off and you need something to come in and reset those levels for you, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's sometimes just needed. Support groups. Get people around you that can help support you in living through these things. Now, I want to do something here. It's interesting. In the verse we're looking at today, I want you to take a look and see out of these scientific methods for overcoming and dealing with anxiety, how many of those find their root right here in Scripture? Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer. What is prayer? Talking to God, right? By prayer. So talking with someone, counseling. You're just counseling right with God immediately on this, right? You're going to the top of the chain here. You're talking with God. You're counseling with God over these things. right? Be in everything by prayer and supplication. Now, supplication is another level above prayer, right? If I'm having a conversation with you, that's one thing. If I'm feeling a need and need to come and really request your help, that's another level, right? There's actually a level of, dare we say, anxiety? There's an issue that I'm dealing with that I need help with, and so I'm coming to God, and when I feel this stress building up inside of me, now I'm laying hold of him and saying, God, I need help, right? I need your help in dealing with this. With, what's the next word? Thanksgiving. What did they tell us to do in mindfulness? Make a list of things you are thankful for. It's amazing how these things that God gave us thousands of years ago are now being borne out. Well, it's not so amazing. It actually makes a lot of sense that they tie together. With thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Come to God and ask. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and minds through Christ Jesus. Now, this is awesome. If you miss everything else from the sermon today, get this, because this is so cool. The peace of God. If you dig a little deeper into this word peace, I was like, okay, we've now defined anxiety. Now let's define peace. What is peace? And as you drill down into this word that Paul uses here, it's actually a relational word. It's not describing something out there or something even inside of me that I have. This peace of God that he's referring to is a relationship with God. It's knowing that I am okay with God. In spite of the difficulty I'm dealing with, in spite of how I've just embarrassed myself or what I've just done, in spite of the fact that I just acted like a 4-year-old kid to this guy on the dock, right? In spite of all this, guess what? I'm at peace with God. God is still my creator. God is still my redeemer. God loves me, and we are not at war with each other. He is not against me. I am at peace. The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding. This goes beyond just an intellectual thinking. This is a relationship word. And Paul uses it specifically to tie us in together. In fact, we could say, rather than, well, let's word it this way. The peace of God comes from the God of peace. Are you with me? The peace of God comes to us from being with the God who is peace. God comes to us and he says, I am your peace. I am at peace with you. I am not looking to go to war with you. I am not looking to condemn you. I didn't come to condemn you. I didn't come to nitpick all your flaws. I came to love you and be in relationship with you. I came to be peace in your life. You don't have to worry about what everyone around you is thinking. You don't have to worry about what's going on in the rest of the world. Yeah, there's stuff going on. You have to deal with it. It's not easy. But guess what? You and I, we're good. You and I, we're going to be together for eternity. And in light of all that, all the other worries and all the other stresses take their proper place. Yeah, sometimes they're painful. They are difficult. They are real, the things we have to deal with. But they are not outsized. They are not something that's bigger than us. They are not this weight that constantly overwhelms us, because God says, I'm bigger than all those things. I have overcome all those things, and I am here to be your peace. It's all about a relationship with Jesus Christ and knowing who you are in relationship to him. When we moved here, I wanted to get horses. And I think I've shown you pictures of the horse I ended up getting before. I'm a little older than I was last time. It's been about 24 years, something like that, since I last really rode horses and worked before I went off to college. And back then, there was no anxiety with horses. Get on, ride as fast and as hard as you can, up, down, sideways, over, it didn't matter. You just go. Well, I'm a few years older and maybe a little wiser now. And so I came back and I said, Arabians are awesome. They're high-spirited, they're fun, they're gorgeous. I think I'm going to get a quarter horse. I just want something I can just relax on. I don't need that level of adrenaline in my life all the time. I can get it when I go mountain biking with the guys or do something else, right? But when it comes to the horse, let's get something a little more calm, a little more steady. And so what do I get? Well, end up with a 1-year-old Arabian. Not only is she an Arabian, she's young, right? And so, and she's not just any Arabian. Like the Arabian I had when I was a kid, she was a Polish Arabian. They're bred to be more calm. They're a little heavier. They're just what they're bred to be. Now, this one came from show stock, which means she is bred to be filled with energy. So when she's out there in the ring, she is floating around, kind of on just a layer of energy. Well, it was an amazing deal, too good to pass up. So we end up with this little 1-year-old filly and start working with her. You can't ride her yet, but taking her out and working with her on the ground. And so we take her out and we're leading her down the road. And my level of comfort, let's just say that. We're not supposed to be anxious. My level of comfort about the day that I would eventually get on her did not increase. We opened the pasture gate. The moment she stepped outside, she was 100% energy, bouncing around, doing circles around me, looking everywhere at everything, just looking for something to spook at, right? We're going down the road, and all of a sudden, she just lights up and starts dancing around, and I look over, and about 50 yards away out in a field are some cows just eating. What is that? And she's like, locked in on these cows, and she's dancing around in circles around me, and she takes a couple steps toward them, and if you're a horse person, like when they get super high energetic, they'll blow out really hard through their nostrils, and she starts blowing out through her nostrils, and I'm thinking, okay, the day I get on this horse, I'm gonna have a broken leg, a broken arm, I'm gonna be in a wheelchair trying to preach at church and things. These thoughts running through my mind, and my level of anxiety about the day that I was going to get on her and ride her kept rising and rising and rising. But luckily, she was only one. And Arabians, you're really not supposed to start working with till they're more like 3 because they develop a little slower. So by the time she's 3, we've gone on all these walks all over the place, and I am thoroughly anxious about climbing on her. Fireworks, rodeo, we can sell tickets in my mind as to what's going on. But after all this time of working her, I was amazed. We're out in the field, and when he's like, hey, let's climb on her. We've got just a halter on, nothing. And I'm like, no. You know this horse, right? You were here when she saw the cows? But he's like, no. So she climbs up on the fence and slides on her. Amar just stands there. Doesn't do a thing. My mind is just blown, right? And so I'm looking, and she just stands there, kind of twitches her ear, kind of looks back, and when he's sitting on her, she doesn't do anything. So time comes to climb on her, and I climb on her, and we're in, first of all, work her really hard to get all the energy burned out of her, make sure she's had no grain for a week, run her in circles so the energy's gone and flatline. Then climb on her, right? And climbed on, she didn't twitch. Started her moving, she walked around. She did not buck once. Not once. And I'm like, okay, this is amazing. This is not the horse that came home. And so after riding in the round pen for a while, just a few weeks ago, this happened. That is not the horse that I had pictured in my mind. That is not the way I had imagined it to happen. And why? Because she and I, over 2 years, had built a relationship. She trusted me, even though I didn't trust her. I'm trusting her. I'm learning to trust her more and more now. And isn't that the way it is with God and us? Isn't that the way it is with God in our relationship? He trusts us. He knows us fully, and he trusts us. And he's bringing us to the places that we are learning to grow in our trust with him. We are worried and afraid at times that maybe he is the God that's out to get us. So maybe he is an adversary out there. But he proves himself over and over that he truly is our peace. He truly is the God who is peace. I want to invite you, as we sing this closing song, to embrace the God who is your peace.